Welcome to Film Fanatics. Good morning, film nerds everywhere.
Nerds, I like that.
Yes. Another chapter in the world's fastest hour on radio. The only place where you can hear nothing but talk about movies.
For an hour.
For an entire 60 minutes. 60 minutes is a show, but this is the real 60 minutes that matter.
That's right.
Absolutely. I'm your host, Bruce Bennett, film critic for the Spectrum and Daily News, and of course, madaboutmovies.org. And across the desk from me, as usual, is the very handsome and debonair Adam Mast, film critic for the independent NZBoneman.com.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett, and a glorious, happy Father's Day weekend to you.
Yes, it is a Father's Day weekend.
Which is totally appropriate, because we'll be talking about Man of Steel in a couple of moments, which kind of has a father-son thread.
Oh, definitely
going on through it.
Thread, yes.
Shall I tell the listeners what's on the marquee today?
Yeah, let's talk about what's on the marquee, because it is a jam-packed show as always.
Yes, it is, and we'll be talking about a highly, highly buzzed-about movie called Man of Steel.
What?
Yes, we'll be talking about This Is the End. We'll discuss The Internship. Can't wait to hear what you thought about that little ditty. I have yet to see it. We'll talk about a little independent movie called The Iceman, which is playing limited right now. Not in St. George yet, but it is playing in bigger markets for all the listeners out there. We're also going to have a discussion about our favorite Father's Day movies, because we've got the big holiday coming up tomorrow, as well as our favorite films that skewer celebrity and Hollywood in honor of This Is the End. And then we'll be talking about Oz the Great and Powerful on DVD. We've got the movies on the Sunset in the Square, which has been going on. We'll chat a little bit about that. And of course, we'll cap off the show with our amazing weekly power rankings.
Yes.
So, in honor of Father's Day and the 75th anniversary of Superman, that's right, it's the 75th anniversary this year, let's talk a little bit about a tiny little reboot you might have heard of called The Man of Steel from Zack Snyder, the director of 300 and Watchmen.
Right.
I will throw it over to you, and you set it up.
Well, if you haven't, if you
were born under a rock,
or just been living in the cave the last few years,
like
you might have not been aware that superhero movies are pretty popular.
They are.
So it was inevitable that DC Comics decided to reboot the entire Superman franchise. I think there's two big problems as far as superhero fans go, superhero movie fans go. The original in 1979 starring Christopher Reeve is arguably one of the best movies ever made.
I would say the best. Personally,
it was probably the first great superhero movie ever made in 1979, and it set a benchmark that to this day still remains. Reeve was obviously perfectly cast. There's a lot of great things about that film. Gene Hackman as the villain Lex Luthor. That was a very traditional story. Then a few years ago, I think it was 2006, Superman Returns came. I rather liked it, but a lot of people had problems with it. They thought it was too sunshiny.
Well, we should make note that what Bryan Singer did with Superman Returns was he was trying to honor what Richard Donner had done and appease the fans at the same time. And
very hard to do.
And there are issues I know you really liked it. You liked it more than I did. I liked the movie. I appreciated what I thought it way too early.
So let's not talk too much about that.
Let's set the stage a little.
So there was a pent-up demand for an excellent reboot of Superman, and Christopher Nolan came aboard, and he was famous for the Batman franchises, the Dark Knight franchises, and his very most well-respected director. He is involved in production, and they got Zack Snyder to direct the film. Zack Snyder has done films like 300,
very flashy,
gritty, very stylized. So a lot of fans were either anxious or concerned about his take on Superman. The movie is called Man of Steel. It's clear that they want to separate themselves from previous Superman franchise, and I think that's probably a good thing. So this movie, Man of Steel, is a Superman story. It is an origin story. It doesn't follow the chronology of the typical origin story. Find out immediately where Superman comes from on planet Krypton. His father is Jor-El, played by
This is a very on Krypton.
It is.
This is not the crystal.
No.
This is a very dark planet. It's trenched in civil war. It sort of mirrors a little bit what's going on here. I think that's all by design.
Yeah, there's some environments that cause the planet to be imploding. So nevertheless, Jor-El, his father and Laura, his mother, have to send. They decide to send Kal-El, their little brand new baby, the first naturally born baby on Krypton in thousands of years. Decide to send him to what they think is this friendly planet called Earth, where they know he will be a freak, he will be a god among men, but they decide to make the ultimate sacrifice and send him on a interplanetary spaceship out there. Meanwhile, we meet General Zod, who is probably the leader of the revolutionary. They're not I guess he's more the military government leader.
Yeah.
Captain Zod, played by Michael Shannon, and he and Jor-El, Russell Crowe, actually had a previously good relationship, but
they have the
parted
same
ways.
agenda. They just want to go about it in different ways.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so something happens there on Krypton, and the planet ultimately gets destroyed. The little baby is sent thousands of miles away towards Earth, and then boom, we are immediately flash way forward to Kal-El, now known as Clark Kent,
right?
As an adult, working on a fishing boat. This sets a stage for an interesting way that they.
It's a fragmented story.
It's
structure.
a fragmented that goes in flash forwards and flashbacks, talking about the evolution of Kal-El on Earth.
And I don't like it. I just want to say right there,
Really?
I didn't like the fragmented story style. And
Was
I know
it too fragmented, or
for me it
was.
was
Too many times?
I think so, and a lot of people like it. I would have preferred Snyder went for a more traditional, straightforward narrative, and I get that this is all on purpose. They want to do something different. I still applaud that, but I think it takes away from the maybe the epicness or the scope.
I'll tell you why I liked it, because every once in a while you'd be surprised when it goes into a little bit of, it dips into a little bit of sentimental. They show some flashbacks of him as a child. I personally liked it because I liked that it was a little contrarian in the way it developed the story.
Yeah.
It might be a little almost too much story. What happens in that situation is it can cause some break in momentum when you've got this action scene and then boom, you go back to narrative. It can be a little convoluted sometimes. I rather liked it because I thought it was there was a lot of nice surprises. You didn't really know where the movie was going.
Well,
you can't say this movie was formulaic.
No, Christopher Nolan did something similar with Batman Begins.
Yes,
also,
correct.
Where it was fragmented and it jumped around.
I would say this.
I thought it suited that movie better.
I would say this is definitely modeled after Batman Begins.
Oh, for sure.
Which I loved.
Yeah.
But let's break it down. Let's talk about the good things and the bad things.
Okay.
First of all, a lot of this movie is going to rely on people's response to Henry Cavill, the British actor who is Superman.
He's a very beautiful man.
He is beautiful, and he has a very strong presence on screen without having to say much. I could not help but I felt I got a similar vibe than Christopher Reeve. Understand that this film is not nearly as fun or as romantic as the original Superman.
I'm glad you brought. I'm glad that you brought that up.
This is a dark interpretation of it. But I loved Henry Cavill. I thought he was terrific.
He is great, but he's more
brooding,
stoic, and rugged and brooding. Whereas there was a certain kind of joy and boyishness charm to what Christopher Reeve did.
I think they realized that. I think they didn't want to go that direction because they didn't want to try.
Do something new.
They really want to do something new. And comic book fans will have to
make their decide.
Well, they'll have to weigh in on this. But I think this Man of Steel more represents the kind of the grittier nature of today's comic books of the last 20 and 30 years.
But I'll tell you.
So on a positive, I thought the casting was great.
Well, I'll tell you what I didn't like what they did with Henry Cavill. It is all Kal-El, and I like that they honor the mythology. Most of the time, they refer to him as Kal-El. He's not, deemed Superman until a certain point in the movie, and they don't bombard you with that.
Which is kind of authentic. I mean, they're trying to be authentic to the story, the original story. Yeah.
Yeah, and I enjoyed that about it. I just lost my train of thought. I was going somewhere, and
let's talk about
Henry Cavill. Let me tell you one thing that did bother me. The Clark Kent Superman dynamic is virtually non-existent in this movie, and there's a reason for it.
Yes.
But that's something that I so love about Donner's
the duality.
Movie. Yeah, and it's not. there are a lot of people who are out there who dismiss it as silly. Oh, he's got the glasses on, but no one recognizes them. No, Christopher Reeve did something much more than that. I want to make that clear.
Oh, it's his body. Body language.
As Clark Kent, there was something very gangly and oafish about him.
Sure.
And it's a great,
but he could type like a mother.
Exactly. and we don't get to see that side of Henry Cavill yet. And I don't want to give too much away about Man of Steel. One thing I want to mention really quick before we get back on track and talk more about the movie is the last 5 minutes of the film, which I think is the best part of the movie. They do something in the last 5 minutes that gives the film sort of a sense of joy that I felt like a lot of the rest of the movie was missing.
Yes, I agree. This is a grittier, more current version of Superman, and this is why it's called
For
Man
today's
of Steel.
world.
I don't knock films for trying to be different and ambitious. It's only whether they execute that ambition well. And for most of this movie, I thought the visual...
It's a spectacle.
The visual acumen with which they display the otherworldly things, the action sequences, his flying in this film is the best. I remember when 1979, when the first Superman came out, we were astounded. But we were astounded by the flying scenes. They looked so cool. I was astounded by these flying scenes too.
Yeah,
even though they're hyperspeed, but they're more realistic. They're more scientifically accurate.
I feel like they are, but they're.
Do you notice how he's breaking through the sound barriers
but there's
all the
more.
time?
But there's more, and I get that effects work has come so far.
Sure.
That it's just the norm. The CG is the norm. But one thing about the original, there was a lot more green screen, and it looked like an actual guy flying. There are moments in this movie where it's animated. You can tell that it's animated.
Right.
I'm not knocking it. That's just the way it is. But you're right. Snyder directs the hell out of this movie. The last 45 minutes is an extended action sequence, much like the end of Avengers. Some people will knock that because it is repetitious.
It goes on.
It's exciting, but
exhausting.
It's like the Energizer Bunny. It goes on and on and on and on.
The film is 2.5 hours long. It's probably 20, 30 minutes too long for me. But let's talk about some good things. Amy Adams is Lois Lane. She works for the Daily Planet, which is a pretty traditional version of this.
She's tenacious, as expected.
Well, and she not just a reporter. She goes after it. Anyway, she's quite adventurous, and she actually kind of works with the military a little bit. Diane Lane and Kevin Costner are his earthly parents. Every scene they're in works for me. I love them.
Costner's great, but didn't you think that Diane Lane was a little... There were moments where she...
Trying a little too hard, maybe?
No, where I felt almost like she was a crazy lady. I don't want to come across as wrong. There was just a couple of moments where there was something just a tiny bit off.
I know what you're saying. Yeah.
And it was weird. And they never went too far with it, but it just right on the edge. I'm like, what's going on here?
Okay, here's my interpretation of that.
And I love Diane Lane.
Me too. Here's my interpretation of that. She didn't have a child of her own.
Yeah.
She has this child that she knew was an alien. She's not...
I guess that would drive a woman mad.
Yeah, maybe she's a little cuckoo because of that.
And Costner...
And there may be a few too many flashbacks to the Kansas farm for me, maybe.
Yeah, well, I don't know. And Costner's terrific. I really, really liked him a lot in the movie.
Just they actually go back to the Kansas farm, not just flashbacks.
Right.
I loved all the flashback scenes of him growing up. I loved all of those things.
There was a tornado sequence that was...
Oh, eerily topical.
Very topical, but something happens during that sequence that, to me, I knew it had to be there, but there's a moment where I felt like some people are moved by it, and I thought it was a little much myself. That's just me, and I know you know what I'm talking about.
Yes, well, he instructs his father, Kevin Costner.
Don't get involved.
Don't get involved.
Because the humans will shun, they'll fear you.
Yes,
they will shun you.
And that's clear.
And that's something that has been dabbled in previous incarnations as well, and that's a big thing about it. I don't know. There's a lot of Clark Kent wandering around, soul searching, trying to figure out who he is and where his place is in this world. And there's metaphor for adoption, which was a theme in Superman Returns as well, and even some Christ-like, some spiritual stuff. In fact, some people have made references to Last Temptation of Christ, which sounds weird on a surface level, but it's in there because this is a guy, he could be, the answer to all our prayers, but he doesn't feel comfortable in those shoes. That's a big theme in this movie, and there's a lot going on in this movie.
I didn't want to see a damaged superhero, and I'm glad Snyder and crew did not go that direction. It's more of a conflicted superhero.
Yeah.
And I found the scene where he goes and talks to a parish priest or a father.
Yeah.
Very touching, and abnormally, I was not expecting that in a superhero movie. They try to ground the film in a certain amount of reality.
Yeah, Superman in the real world.
In the real world.
Yeah.
I love that aspect of it. And
the idealism is still in place. My big fear is this was just going to be... I do think that it is a little too brooding. I wanted more joy.
Yes,
but that...
Right. We got that in the Iron Man movies. I think
exactly.
one reason people really are drawn to the Iron Man and especially the Avengers is there's a dry wit that pervades it. I'm okay.
There's magic and joy, a lot of magic and joy to those
again,
movies.
we keep going back, Boyle, it's not the 1979 Christopher Reeve Superman. We've got to get beyond that and go, that was a classic film in its own right.
Yeah.
This movie does not want to be that film, and it does not try to be that film. And so we got to be careful not to say the film should have been more like that.
No, I agree, but there are a lot of folks out there that it's hard to not draw comparisons, and there are some people, I've read some articles where film fans have gone back and revisited and the originals, and they're still as great as they always were, or they weren't. A lot of people are saying that Man of Steel is the Superman film they've been waiting for years.
Yeah.
I don't get that either. I liked this movie, but I wouldn't say that I loved it. I thought there were elements that fell flat for me, and I did find the movie too long. I thought the action was great, but again, as I said at the top of the review, some of that action stuff, it is exciting, but you watch robots demolish stuff in Transformers, and there's a certain level of redundancy that happens.
I just call it exhaust.
Yeah.
It's fatigue.
Well,
I did feel that a few of the final battle scenes went on too long.
It did. And it's exciting.
It's a very loud film.
Yeah, it's bombastic.
It's bombastic.
For sure.
The soundtrack is fantastic.
Yeah, Hans Zimmer's score matches the visual bombast.
Wow,
it's
great.
Question.
But at a certain point, maybe it's just my age, but it wears on you. And I wish this film were about 20 minutes shorter. And I agree with you. I don't like to tell people this is what it should have been. It's not joyless.
Yeah.
It's just there's not that wit or lightness that you see in some of the
that
more recent
awe-inspiring
superheroes.
sort of gee whiz type of thing that you got.
But I don't think we got that in Dark Knight either.
Well,
Dark Knight.
Yeah, but Dark Knight.
That's to me. The movie, the template for this movie was the Dark Knight movies, and I say Batman Begins, Dark Knight.
Well, okay. Batman Begins, Dark Knight.
This is more of a Christopher Nolan film.
Dark Knight is brooding. You're right, but there's something really, really character-driven on both sides of the fence, not just from Batman's perspective, but from the Joker.
How did you
as well.
Feel about Michael Shannon as Captain Zod?
Michael Shannon is fiery.
General Zod. Sorry,
he's fiery. He's intense. I love his intensity. Michael Shannon is such a commanding on-screen presence that he doesn't really need to shake up who he is as an actor. It's just that intense thing that he has. I did feel like there wasn't a lot of depth to him. Also, it should be noted, he's not really a villain. If you really break down what he is, there's a reason he's doing what he's doing, but I don't know that I call him a villain.
He is a villain because he believes in his race overall, and he's willing to destroy all of Earth.
Well, that's true, but that's
so he's a villain.
That's a matter of perception, though.
He does something in the early first scenes, which is kind of a prologue, that shows that he is a villain. He's ruthless.
He's about self-preservation, is what I'm trying to say.
But that's still villainous. If it means that you're going to destroy people,
that's true. But I wouldn't say that his goal is not to rule the world. He's not a Lex Luthor or previous incarnations.
So I think you said he was rather superficial.
He's a supremacist.
No, you said something about. He's kind of cardboard character. Or,
well, I
don't think that. I think he has many more levels than most superhero villains.
Let me reiterate. He is not.
He has a past.
He's not a cardboard cutout villain. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying there isn't really a lot of layers to the character. He has one agenda. There's one thing he wants to do.
Like most villains, he has one.
Well, I think there's a lot more depth.
But you weren't really sure. The thing I liked about him, you weren't really sure because he has an affinity, because he's from Krypton and he still loves his people. You weren't really sure what he would do with Kal-El or / Superman. There's a turning point where he decides what he's going to do. But remember, he goes back to get him, not necessarily to kill him.
Yeah. That's my whole point.
And so. Yeah, but I'm saying he was still villainous, what he wanted to do, but he still saw Superman
as a villain. But I'm just saying,
as a kryptonite. Is that what you would call him, or Kryptonian? Well, a person from Kryptonian.
By the way, kryptonite. We haven't even talked about that, but let's not spoil that for him.
Yeah, okay.
There is something.
So anyway, it sounds like I enjoyed it much more. I wish it was shorter and not as noisy.
I did not think that. I expected more from Amy Adams. I don't believe the problem. I don't think Amy Adams is the problem. I think she's fine as an actress. I just think it was the writing. I felt there was a lack of development, and actually there was a lack of chemistry, I thought, between she and Henry Cavill. But that's a writing issue.
Yes,
and
correct.
It's the way the film was.
Again,
was
I think we have to go into this movie hoping that it's a reboot and not a reimagining of the 1979 Christopher Reeve
I enjoyed the movie. I saw it in IMAX, which, by the way, was gorgeous. It was breathtaking. There was so much meticulous detail in this movie and things to look at, and the sound just blow you to the back.
Okay, I just have to share what this is interesting. I went into the restroom after the movie, because it's a long movie, so you go to the restroom. There was a couple of old guys there, and when I mean old, way older than me, okay? For those of you who are wondering. Anyway, they said, that movie was all effects and no story. Terrible. They concurred. I don't agree. I agree there was a ton of story in this film. You may have thought the special effects went on too long. I can see that.
There's more upstairs.
But there's a lot of exposition in this film.
You can't compare this to a Transformers movie where it's all special effects and no heart.
Agreed. Okay.
The heart is there, but I do want to say, and maybe this is my problem, I did feel like that the trailer evoked more of an emotional response from me than the movie did as a whole.
There was a couple of very tender scenes, I thought, though, in the movie.
There is.
Yeah. I feel like this movie really has the Christopher Nolan spirit, and his isn't happy and joyful.
Right.
There's a darkness, there's a gloominess to it, but I didn't feel
that it overtook it.
That it overtook the film, because Henry Cavill and his conflictedness, he still wanted to be good.
Yeah.
And I'm glad they didn't damage I'm glad they didn't damage the image of Superman as pure good.
Right.
Do you know what I'm saying?
They didn't.
So I guess I was kind of glad that after I'm sitting in the movie about half an hour, I go, okay, I know what this movie is not now, and I'm happy that it's not. Maybe it was more worries. So
I still did feel there were moments that felt flat to me, and I'm not knocking the movie. I really liked it. Would I call it I think the word disappointment is a harsh word. I guess I would say I was somewhat disappointed, but again, partly that's my fault. The expectations were sky high. I can tell you, and I know I'm going to take a beating from listeners on this, in terms of sheer enjoyment, I had a better time at Star Trek Into Darkness. That's just me. I really liked Man of Steel. I think the last 5 minutes of this movie sets up another movie in a great way, and I walked away excited for what's to come. I can give it that.
Right.
And I really liked it. By the way, Russell Crowe's fantastic too. Yeah. He's somber, very low key, and I bought him. I thought he was great. And before we move on, I do want to say that this movie really amps up the sci-fi angle. We really haven't talked about that. And if you think about it, Kal-El is an alien on Earth.
Yes.
And they really push that stuff to the forefront. The opening of this movie, it's almost like Zack Snyder's Star Wars in a way. There's a lot of...
I thought they spent $50 million just on that prologue.
Yeah, and they did that Donner's version too. That whole opening act on... although in the original, I always loved how Marlon Brando called it Krypton. It's like hurricane or hurricane, and Marlon Brando put his own spin on it.
Well, and he's trying to do
everyone calls it Krypton.
He's trying hard to put in a British accent. Russell Crowe doesn't have to try hard.
He's got the Aussie thing going. So, I like the movie. I think people who want the action and felt that Superman Returns was a letdown, there wasn't enough, Superman punching people in the face.
Yeah.
You're going to get that in this movie.
And this is a good film. I can see why it's not going to be unilaterally beloved. I can understand that. It's ambitious and dark, but I think it's one of those films that people will talk about. And I even think it'll be one of those films because when Batman Begins first came out, there was controversy about the film.
Yeah.
And I think over time people began to really, really respect it.
Yeah. And Dark Knight was much more beloved. And can we expect the same thing from the next Man of Steel?
Well, like we always say, the Dark Knight was beloved because of Heath Ledger.
Well,
he really there was something going on there.
That cloud weighs heavy over that movie, but I still think it's far and away the best of the Batman movies for me personally.
Yeah. So it's interesting.
And you know,
so congratulations to Zack Snyder.
I think it's his best.
Who didn't
movie.
stub his toe.
I do want.
Yeah.
Yes,
he didn't stub his toe. He was ambitious. Yeah. I think he tried very hard to satisfy
does have a love for the
old school Superman fans and the people and the young kids who want to see tons of action, grittiness, and all that sort of stuff.
They're gonna get it. But yeah, you're right. The movie is too long, and I think there are sloppy moments. There is some pacing stuff going on, but by and large, it's a spectacle, and it's
both predicted it would make $325 million or more.
Make a lot of money.
You think so?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Alrighty.
Very good.
So moving on.
There were other movies.
Yes. Let's go from PG-13 to R-rated, shall we? Now, Bruce, I know you're not a big fan of Seth Rogen. You think his 15 minutes was up a long time ago.
Yeah. He was a little bit charming in
Guilt Trip.
Guilt Trip.
Right.
I liked him there. He was okay.
I think.
But you could have plugged 20 other guys in that film, and they would have been just as good.
Right. I mean, and Paul Rudd, he's not. But I do think the guy's got a sharp comic sensibility, particularly from a writing standpoint. And when he surrounds himself with other funny people, they bring out the better in him. And this is the end. Man, this is a wild movie. It's crude. It's irreverent. It is very R-rated. It's surely going to offend a lot of people. I laughed my butt off through the whole
But you know it's hard going in. How can we be offended?
Exactly. Well, you'd be surprised.
It's like people walking into
people complaining about movies, and I'm sitting. What did you think you were getting into? It's like do your own research.
I heard the film was almost rated NC-17, and then I was offended by it. Why would you go see the movie?
Let me set up for this movie very simple. The film opens up with Seth Rogen picking up Jay Baruchel, another trivia actor. He was a $1 million baby, that sort of disabled boxer at the beginning. I mean, he's done a lot of R-rated there as well. Seth picks him up at the airport. The gimmick is they're playing themselves. They're playing hyper real versions of themselves. And their plan is to go to this big party at James Franco's house up in Hollywood. So they go to this party. Everyone's partying, getting wasted. In the midst of this party, the apocalypse hits.
Nice.
Outside the house. So these guys have to figure out what the heck's going on. They have no clue what's going on. And it creates a handful of really funny insights. This movie is just a lot of it plays like an R-rated version of Ghostbusters. That's the film that kept going through my mind while I was watching. Obviously, it's raunchier. One of the things I so greatly loved about Ghostbusters this film has as well as its scope. Even though it's a comedy, Ivan Reitman took Ghostbusters and made this. That's a big movie. It's big in scope, and This Is the End has a similar dynamic. This movie's got everybody in it. It's a A-list roster of comical heavyweights. It's got guys but a lot of these guys, I don't know that you're necessarily a fan, but it's got Danny McBride.
Oh yeah, I know.
It's obviously
Tropic
James
Thunder.
Franco. Yeah, Charlie Robinson, who was in Hot Tub Time Machine,
which I never saw.
Which was really funny. Jonah Hill's in it.
But is that the kind?
Rihanna's
is that the kind of R-rated humor it is? Hot Tub Time Machine, misogynistic, stupid frat boy humor.
It's got a frat boy humor edge, and I think that
Hollywood keeps pushing those movies, man.
But they make money. You know, the reason we have 3 Transformers and a 4th on the way is because they make money. But the thing is,
but I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the reason we have The Hangover is because there's a ton of guys like seeing those kind of stupid movies.
I enjoyed this movie a lot more than The Hangover. Is it stupid?
Any of the Hangovers or the first
think so.
Hangover?
I liked it more than all the Hangover movies. Right. I do think that a lot of there are jokes in this film that don't stick. There's no doubt about it. But something weird happens as this movie progressed. I liked these characters, and it does have something to say. It goes into this whole, rapture plot, and these guys are like, well, wait. God is taking a bunch of people. Why are we still here? These guys are all making fun of themselves. It's very self-effacing, and I think that goes a long way.
It does.
And is it raunchy? Yeah, but it's endearing in its raunch. And I know there are certain types of movies with bathroom humor that you have a hard time with, but for me, this movie was.
There are lines for me where it crosses when it becomes mean-spirited.
Right. I didn't think the movie was mean-spirited.
Okay.
I'll tell you, there's some great cameos that I don't want to give away. There's great special effects. There's actually scenes in the movie that are surprisingly scary. I recognized elements of movies like The Mist and some of John Carpenter's work in this. You know what else it reminded me of? Our listeners won't know about this, but you will. You remember that first Gorilla short we made, Into the World?
Yeah.
If you go to see this movie, I'll be darned if you're not going to think of that. It definitely had that element to it. But man, it was loads of fun. I really, really enjoyed it. We laughed all the way through, and I think this movie could be a sleeper. I think it's going to be a pretty big hit.
Yeah.
So I liked it.
We'll see if it gets lost in all that blockbuster summer.
Weak year for comedies. Weak year for comedies. I haven't been impressed. I really like This Is the End. There's a film coming out later this month called The Heat with Melissa McCarthy and Sandra Bullock that I've had a chance to see that I really, really liked.
Really good? Okay.
Identity Thief? No. I did not like it. Not a fan. So.
Yeah. So far, the best comedy for me was The Incredible Burt Wonderstone, which I really liked.
And I definitely think thus far This Is the End is the funniest movie.
Well, let's talk about a comedy.
I guess, if you want to call it that.
The Internship?
Are you going to get... I didn't see it.
Oh, yeah.
All right, let's hear it.
The Internship basically stars Vince Vaughn and Owen Wilson, and these two guys are salesmen. They're watch salesmen, kind of old school. And when they lose their jobs, they're forced to compete in the very difficult job market, and they just don't know what to do. They seem like they're fish out of water from a different time. It's interesting to think guys that are pushing 40 are. You know what I mean? So anyway, they decided to interview with a little company called Google.
You seen Terminator?
And they passed an online interview, which was really funny. And they decide they're just going to take advantage of their ignorance and just their sheer will and their street smarts and their ability to win over is going to help them. Google does when they get into this final interview. It's actually a competition. So their teams they divide people up in teams. Most of these teams are all young college graduates that are very tech savvy, they know their stuff. And here's Vince Vaughn and Owen Wilson. And so they divide teams, and there's a bunch of competition. They're put in certain circumstances. So the employer. By the way, we get to see Google's campus, San Francisco, and it's kind of cool. All the food there is free, and it's a very employee-friendly kind of atmosphere. But still, Vince Vaughn, Owen Wilson. People see them. They know that these guys don't belong. But of course, exactly. But of course, they're going to win everybody over. Their savvy and their determination, positive attitude. Right? Their star appeal. And there is. There's one particular team goes through real life competition. People have to put brooms underneath their crotch and run around and throw balls. It's pretty funny. It's really funny. Yeah, it's funny. The idea is funny. The execution's funny. And of course, we know how this film is going to turn out. We know that their team is going to win, right? But it's a kind of a modern day revenge. All these tech guys, women too, are very nerdy. And so what Vince Vaughn teaches them is the power of being yourself, and the power of looking beyond the technology. And let me just say, there's some things in it. Some of the humor falls very formulaic. But this is the best thing Vince Vaughn have done in a long time. And if you like those guys, you'll like this movie. It's winning. Yeah, it was fun.
Sounds like Monsters.
Yeah, exactly. Like I said, it's
Animal
very
House meets Revenge of the Nerds.
Exactly. Yeah. It's exactly that formulaic. You know exactly how it's going to end. But I have to say, Vince Vaughn and Owen Wilson are great together.
Well, they have rapport.
They report a lot of these scenes, like some great comedies. It almost feels like it's not scripted. They're just kind of riffing on each other. And I know critics are going to hate it because it's not raunchy enough, and it's too.
It's sitting at like 15% at Rotten Tomatoes.
Right. There's one particular scene where they go out to a strip joint that's completely unnecessary and falls flat, and it's weird.
Yeah.
It's just like here you have this upbeat kind of humor, and then all of a sudden they go to the strip joint and get everybody drunk, and it's just bad. Oh, I mean, that belonged in an R-rated movie, but even if it was in an R-rated movie, it wasn't funny. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They could have made this movie even more lighthearted and
it was
sweet.
like a big wedding outtake.
Yeah, and I don't know why they're saying could have been the sequel to Wedding Crashers, because Wedding Crashers was a hard R. That movie was about.
They say that because it's Vince Vaughn.
That movie was about TNA and foul language primarily, and I found it very overrated.
Really?
But this movie is lighthearted and sweet, and so except for that 10-minute excursion in the strip joint, which I'm sure Adam would enjoy, but aside from that, maybe Tim.
Well, I do frequent.
Certainly not Scott. He has high standards. But
this review brought to you by Little Darlings in Las Vegas, Nevada.
Well, and speaking of that, this movie does feel like it will impress people as one long freaking commercial for Google.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Well, the whole thing takes place at Google's headquarters, so people don't go in going, "I don't like that they filmed it at Google."
Right.
Well, if you know that's the premise.
By the way, not to change the subject, Man of Steel had a lot of endorsement stuff going on. Did you see the Sears building?
Yeah.
There was a lot of. I'm wondering. I heard that. Let's just say there's some big time endorsements.
Yeah, I didn't think it was overdone.
No, but it always makes me laugh.
But anyway, this movie does. The guy who heads up the competition, he's not a perfectly good Google employee. I mean, he's tough on everybody, which is fine. I think a lot of kids might relate to the fact that it's a tough job market and what you have to do to have a job. Again, it's a modern day Revenge of the Nerds.
Yeah.
But I know that some critics will wish it was not as formulaic and wish it was darker, but that's not the kind of movie it was.
Well, Revenge of the Nerds was a hard R, I might add. But
back in its day.
Yeah, I guess today it probably would. They cut out a couple of,
Yes, and I would say,
moments that gets a PG.
Right, and except for the excursion in the strip joint, it's not misogynistic or anything. Women are treated fairly, and
why?
So, yeah, exactly. So, so anyway, I rather liked Internship. It's not a classic. Do not get me wrong, but as you said, we are dying for good comedy.
Got the job done.
And I especially think there's a real dearth of good PG-13 comedy.
Yeah, well, and R-rated comedies are in. They have been for the last couple of years. And
some of the funniest things: Bridesmaids, the reboot of 21 Jump Street.
Yeah, 21 Jump Street is great.
Really funny. But if a father wants to take his kids out to
the Internship
what's the last movie, Napoleon Dynamite? I mean, I don't know.
It's been a long time since
it's hard to find good PG-13
this Christmas
films.
We get Anchorman 2, and I'm holding out a lot of hope that that's going to be the comedy.
Well, and it just seems like even in the PG-13 movies, they have to go dirty. They have to go crass in order to get a certain element, and I'm just like, gosh, I miss those great
you're
PG,
right. Napoleon
PG-13
Dynamite
movies.
probably was the last comedy. There are a couple of moments where it really doesn't. That movie is so tame.
Yeah.
Okay, so
that's a show right there.
Yeah.
The best PG or PG-13 comedy. Probably we'd say they're the animated films, like Finding Nemo and some other films.
I think probably the greatest PG-rated comedy of all time, I would say, is probably Ghostbusters.
Maybe.
Or Airplane. I'm sorry, but Airplane's pretty raunchy.
Well, there's nudity in that film, as I recall.
There's the girl
it
jumps
would be,
in front of the camera.
It would be rated R today, probably.
Oh, I don't know.
So anyway, I liked it. Dial down your expectations. I say if you're a fan of Vince Vaughn and Owen Wilson, go see it.
Okay. Before we go to break, I'm going to talk about a little movie called The Iceman, which I said at the top of the show is limited. I actually saw it down in Vegas. As it turns out, General Zod isn't the only crazy villain that Michael Shannon is playing in theaters this weekend. The Iceman is a biopic about Richard Kuklinski. Are you familiar with him?
No.
He's
a
hitman. Contract killer. And this movie sort of delves into how he hooked him with the mob. And they said by the time his tenure in murdering had ended, well over 100 people. And this movie goes into his how he got to the mob. Michael Shannon I think he's one of the best actors today. He's phenomenal and Take Shelter.
Love that movie.
He makes decent material better. You look at him in something like Premium Rush. He's so great. Once again,
he's not your typical archetype guy.
Looking sort of lumbering, hunched over, and he's got this. There's something quiet, intensity.
Yes, and yet he can be very vulnerable, like you said, and Take Shelter. He's very empathetic. You can tell there's something on there, and yet he's genuine.
I agree. In this movie, he's playing a very cold-hearted individual, but they amp up the sympathy.
So do you recommend it?
I like the movie. The first half hour I was compelled. I was riveted. Movie's got a great supporting cast. Ray Liotta's he has in this good.
Winona Ryder
plays
the wife.
She's fantastic.
Why isn't she in one?
She's really great. And Michael Shannon, you know, his Richard character doesn't care about anything. He's a very cold-hearted guy, but he does care about his family, his life, that he cares about. The second half of the movie kind of peters out a little bit. It does sustain that intensity. And I felt like this guy's compelling. A buddy of mine likes to lives of serial killers. He's actually good, but he's fascinated by that stuff. And he's delved into the history of this guy. And therefore I knew a lot about it based on some of the stuff a buddy of mine had told me. I felt like they should have gone more into his psychology, because this guy's crazy. I guess after he was brought to justice, they arrested him. This is not a spoiler. This is something that is, out there. It's even in the trailer. But as a kid, you hear stories about Jeffrey Dahmer and the behavior that these people exuded when they were children, and this guy had a lot of that as well. And I kind of wish they would have went into more of this stuff and really gone inside his head. But it's totally worth seeing just because Michael Shannon is so.
Well, people are going to have to look really hard to see it because
it may open here. Hopefully they'll bring it here. And
it might be in Salt Lake or Las Vegas, maybe.
It's in Vegas. That's where I saw it. It's I'm sure it's in L.A. So listeners out there, it's
Iceman.
a movie worth checking out. We should also mention we're still hoping that Megaplex is going to bring both Mud and Before Midnight to town. Those are two films that I've seen that I loved. They opened a little independent movie called Philly Brown over at Main Street Cinema, which I saw at Sundance like 2 years ago. It's about a young girl, or late teens. I think she's 19 or 20. She a gal from Los Angeles who wants to become a rapper, like a professional rapper.
Oh, really? Interesting.
And how what she has to go through to get her foot in the door in a real
good film.
Tough. Not a great film, but really interesting and made on the cheap. Very impressive for the funds that they had to put the movie together.
Very independent film.
Oh, very independent film. And then also Quartet with Dustin Hoffman's directorial efforts up at Red Cliff Cinemas right now.
Right.
So those are movies you might want to seek out too. So anyway, we're going to take a little break. You're listening, of course, to Film Fanatics with Adam Mast and Bruce Bennett. You can stream us live at ktim.org. We will be right back.
George's Cafe and Pub in historic Ancestor Square at the heart of downtown St. George. A relaxed atmosphere, live music and food. Now open for breakfast, lunch and dinner. You can check out their webpage at www.georgescorner.com for reservations, specials and details. George's Corner Restaurant, St. George Boulevard and Main Street, Ancestor Square. That's downtown St. George where arts and history flourish. KTIM is a supporter of local businesses and our community. George's Corner Restaurant, a proud supporter of The Peter Gunn Show.
Tuned in to local music, KTIM 95.3.
Ever wonder why the sky looks blue? What fire is made of? Or how you get vitamin D from the sun?
Join the Philosophers of Science every Tuesday night at 7 and explore the answers to these questions and many more. We'll discuss science in the news, show you the facts behind popular fictions, and explore what scientists currently know about the universe. From chemistry to cosmology, ancient life to futuristic technology, the Philosophers of Science is a show not to be missed.
Join us every Tuesday at 7 p.m. on KTIM Radio.
Welcome back to Film Fanatics. This is Adam Mast. Sitting across from me, the amazing, the glorious, the handsome Bruce Bennett. You can stream us live at ktim.org. Look at our beautiful faces. So at the top of the show, we talked about Man of Steel, which we both liked. I did feel it was somewhat of a disappointment. I did have some issues with it, but I still thought it was solid. You really, really liked it more than I did.
I gave it a B plus, probably.
Yeah, I'd probably give it a B, I think.
Okay.
So I liked it. So anyway, the reason I bring up Man of Steel is there's a father son thing going on in that movie, and we've got
very strong.
Oh, for sure. And we've got Father's Day coming up tomorrow, and you
That's
and I
right.
are both dads. So we thought it'd be fun to
kids.
shamelessly plug ourselves, being the amazing fathers we are.
Yes,
and talk about some.
You are an amazing father.
You are too, my friend. So is Tim. Scott hasn't traveled that road yet.
Scott is
He's still just
that
a
he
son,
knows
so.
that he knows of.
Got a great dad.
Hear that?
But he's got a great dad.
Scott loves his daddy.
He
That's
does.
so
He loves his dad. You can tell that.
So let's talk about some cool Father's Day movies to watch this weekend, shall we?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll throw it over to you.
Okay, well, I thought of a lot, and I'm thinking, okay, I don't want to say the same ones as Adam, so of course we could go down the Indiana Jones Last Crusade route, or there's movies that are totally about father-sons, like The Road, but I don't know if you want
Or even in Daughters, too.
Yeah, I don't know if you want to take out a movie like The Road and watch on Father's Day. It is a father-son.
Father's Day movie of the year, for sure.
It's about, a father and son surviving in a world gone crazy. It's a survival movie. And I thought of some recent movies like The Descendants, which have a great father figure in it, Big Fish. Finding Nemo and The Incredibles are great father stories in a lot of respects. But here's my top three, okay? I'm putting Pursuit of Happiness as my favorite father movie of the last 10 years. I'd also like to say there's a little movie called In Good Company with Dennis Quaid, where he plays a father who has to fire some employees, and he has to take on Topher Grace as an employee, and they kind of actually end up having a father-son kind of relationship. It's really sweet. I think a lot of fathers would relate to it. And I also want to mention a terrific little film called Evelyn, which a lot of people didn't see.
With Pierce Brosnan.
Pierce Brosnan,
It's a terrific movie.
based on a true story where up until just recently in Ireland, the law decreed that if a mother abandoned her children, the father had to prove that he could take care of the kids. And Pierce Brosnan is an Irish father with some issues, and so the Catholic Church takes away his kids, and he has to earn them back. Wonderful, heartwarming film.
Sweet.
These three little Irish girls are his daughters.
Adorable.
Will rip your guts out. But I love the story, even though it's rather simplistic, about a father fighting for his daughters. It's terrific.
It's an outstanding movie.
But I also I said, I got to put something funny in here. So this might be the funniest father film of all time, Mr. Mom with Michael Keaton,
Classic.
1993.
Almost put it on my list.
Yeah.
Love it.
I'm just saying that's one you throw in there. And what's interesting now, 20 years later, Adam, is to think, I know a lot of Mr. Moms. Back in 1993, it was so odd that it was funny because I knew no fathers that basically were staying home taking care of the kids. Now, you and I both know several young men.
Yeah, that movie was ahead of its time. Because it's about a stay-at-home father.
I know a lot of men that right now would say, I'm not going to watch that and laugh because that is my life. It's not funny.
And go figure. You know who wrote that movie, right?
I
John
can't remember.
Hughes.
Oh, John Hughes.
John
the
Hughes
late John Hughes
had his finger on the pulse.
Yeah,
he understood.
Terrific. So if you want a funny film to watch on Father's Day, that is right at the top of my list.
I love your picks. I had a couple of honorable mentions. One of which was Pursuit of Happiness, which is a movie with Will and Jaden Smith that I absolutely adore.
Great film. My favorite film that year, I think.
Great movie. The vacation films. Well, at least the first and Christmas Vacation.
Sure.
Clark Griswold, the bumbling dad, but you got to love the guy.
I think they're all new on Blu-ray too. They made new Blu-ray versions. Yeah.
One that a lot of people might not attribute as a great movie, but it does have a great father in it, To Kill a Mockingbird, which I maintain is probably the best book adaptation that we've ever seen.
Maybe.
Gregory Peck is Atticus Finch.
Terrific.
He's amazing in that movie. The three that I would go with, number 3 you mentioned in your honorable mention is Finding Nemo, which to this day is still my favorite Pixar film. I love Toy Story, don't get me wrong. There is something about Finding Nemo that it's so simple, but it's so sweet. A great father-son story, and Albert Brooks is so terrific in that movie.
The 3D treatment of it that came out last year was terrific, by the way.
Yeah. Also on my list, and I know you love this one, Field of Dreams, which is, I mean, if your heart is not broken by the final couple of minutes of that movie, Did
you remember that scene in Man of Steel where Kevin Costner's on a farm and he's standing in front of a cornfield? Did Field of Dreams run through your mind right there?
You want to have a catch?
I mean, it ran through my mind. Kevin Costner, cornfields.
Totally,
come on.
Absolutely, it's there. If you build it, they will come. Number 1 on my list, I went comedy. Actually, it's more of a dramedy, and this is a film that I absolutely love, and I still think it's Ron Howard's best movie, and that's Parenthood.
Interesting.
And Steve Martin I believe he did this. He didn't have any kids when he did this movie.
He still doesn't have any kids.
It makes it a miracle. It's a movie miracle.
I don't buy him as father of the bride, but I did buy him in Parenthood.
Oh, he's so great, and it's not just a father-son story. He's got several kids. They've got the girls and the 2 boys, and if you haven't seen this movie, it is a fantastic ensemble, and it cuts deep because it shows a lot of different scenarios dealing with parenthood, and I loved every second.
Now, my wife mentioned one, and I was not going to mention it, but the more I think about it, I think a lot of fathers would relate to it, and it was pioneering in its day. I think it was 1979, Kramer versus Kramer.
Oh, yeah.
One of Dustin Hoffman's great movies of the 70s. Meryl Streep's, I think, her first movie.
Yeah.
And I think, Dustin Hoffman plays a father, and he loses his son, and he's going into a court battle, and he gets temporary custody. And so while it is a very hard film to watch, if you're going through a divorce or have gone through a divorce, so many people have, Adam, that they probably will really relate to this film. And I think ultimately it does justice to the dedication of being a good father.
Well, and
he bonds with his little boy.
Yeah, and a big thing about that movie is this estranged couple trying to do what's best for their kid.
Yeah.
And that's tough business. There were a couple of other films, Ordinary People, which
absolutely
is another one that's really, really
I hadn't
dark
thought of Ordinary
subject
People.
matter, but it's got that thread going on in it too.
We all go to movies for different reasons.
Yeah.
Some of us go to just, some people just go to, they want to be swept away. They want to be purely entertained. But sometimes you want something that really represents pain or experience that you've gone through in your life. And I love those kind of films.
And you remember Irreconcilable Differences with Drew Barrymore?
Absolutely.
Emancipate from her parents. That's another one that's, of course, the parents learn.
There was a film a few years ago, remember, with Kevin Kline called Life as a House?
Oh, yeah.
Where he has a estranged relationship with Darth Vader.
Like that movie.
What's his name?
Mannequin Skywalker. Hayden Christensen.
Hayden Christensen, who was terrific, by the way, in that film.
One of his better movies.
Again, it talks about some very delicate, difficult, even painful experiences, but for some fathers and some families, it's very relatable.
Yeah. Now, we are running out of time. We had a topic that we're not really going to be able to cover extensively, but I just wanted to throw.
I want to hear your list. I didn't really make a list. So you tell me your list.
We in honor of This Is the End, we thought it'd be fun to pick movies that poked fun at Hollywood and celebrity. So I threw 3 movies together. And number 3 on my list would be This Is the End, which I think is a great self-effacing, these funny guys making fun of themselves. Number 2, and I know you'll agree with me, is Tropic Thunder, which is
for sure
a hilarious movie that pokes fun at egomaniacal actors and the lengths that they go to for their craft. And number 1, Robert Altman's The Player, which is a fantastic satire about a screenwriter who inadvertently kills a producer and gets away with it. And if that's not hilarious, I don't know what is.
I didn't get The Player. I watched it. People, maybe it was built up too much. I have not been a Robert Altman fan.
Did you like Shortcuts?
It's okay.
Oh, I'm a huge.
I'll tell you one that's not a movie, but that just was released on DVD that is exactly what you're talking about, and that's the Gary Shandling Show.
Yeah.
I would recommend people, if they haven't heard that, go rent those. Start with season 1. If you want to see something that many people consider the finest insider Hollywood, work, whether film or TV, the Gary Shandling Show is fantastic.
Okay. Moving on, let's talk DVDs. There are a couple of movies coming out on DVD this week. One is Jack the Giant Slayer, and when that movie was reviewed on this show, I hadn't seen it yet.
Oh, right.
I have seen it since, and I don't get it. That's one of
great
those,
visuals.
It's a misfire.
They spent all their money on the visuals, none on the script.
It's got such a weird pace too. It's strange. Like you feel like the movie's coming to an end, and then it goes on for another 40 minutes. It's got such a great cast. Ewan McGregor, Stanley Tucci.
How do you make them boring?
Nicholas Hoult is a terrific young talent that we're going to be seeing a lot of. And Bryan Singer, left that troubled production and has jumped right into X-Men, presumably to just forget about that. It sat on a shelf for a couple of years while they retooled the effects.
I think it made money. Did it make close to $100 million?
It lost money.
Lost money, but okay, I didn't mean that. I didn't mean.
I don't think it.
I don't know that it made a profit, right?
I think it maybe made $65 million.
But I'm saying it was fairly popular.
Worldwide, it'll be lucky to recoup its loss. But not a terrible movie, but a totally just a mess.
I've got one that's kind of father-son-ish. and that's that just came out on DVD. Snitch with Dwayne The Rock Johnson.
Just came out. Love Snitch.
And so it is father-son. His son does something stupid and gets thrown in jail. So Dwayne Johnson decides he is going to
help make busts
to get his son out of jail.
And I'll tell you that the thing that I knew I was watching something completely different is the moment when The Rock, or Dwayne Johnson as he's called these days, when he is trying to infiltrate that little drug ring, and he's talking to that drug dealer, and the drug dealer pops off to him, and you're like, uh-oh, here comes The Rock. And they kick his butt.
Yeah,
they totally take him down. I'm like, holy cow, this is not typical.
That's
Rock.
Also a good example of a movie where the drug guys are very credible, even though it's a PG-13.
Right.
They seem very spooky and creepy to me.
Yeah, and the car chases are done sparingly. There's nothing over the top. It's all very realistic.
Excellent little B film that will change your opinion of Dwayne Johnson.
It will. And the family film of the year, a movie that I want families everywhere to check out this weekend, The Last Exorcism Part 2.
Yes, of course.
Which is a terrific movie. I'm just
Get
kidding.
the family around.
Take your kids to watch it. But as silly and
Dad, open your presents and your new ties, and then take out
Last Exorcism 2. I actually enjoyed Last Exorcism 2. The first one I really liked. I don't like all horror movies. They're not. There's a lot of crappy ones out there. And
name one.
Huh?
See?
Cabin in the Woods.
No, name one you didn't like.
Oh, that I didn't like?
Time's up. See what am I point?
Hold up. Just give me a second. Everything else. I can't think of a horror film that's come out this year that totally bowled me over. I don't think Last Exorcism 2 is perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but I thought.
Did you ever see the one
was overrated?
Did you ever think the Guillermo del Toro one?
Devil's Backbone?
Mama.
I liked Mama.
Was it good? Yeah.
I didn't.
More of a ghost story, right?
Yeah. It kind of was a throwback to like Lady in the White.
Did you see The Purge, which just came out?
No, and I heard it's awful.
Awful? I heard that too.
I wanted to go see it. I just haven't. I hear it's a high concept, but you just watch it scratching your head. It's like, now why are they letting people do whatever they want for 24 hours? And how come they can't attack the president? Like, why are certain things off
Speaking
limits?
of attacking the president, we have another attacking the White House film.
Oh, yuck. White House Down?
White House Down. Looks dumb?
So jokey. Like, every time something cool's about to happen, Jamie Foxx or Channing Tatum make a joke.
Yeah.
And
we already had Olympus Has Fallen.
Dark, edgy
but that was a very very violent film. It would be interesting to see because Channing Tatum and Jamie Foxx are very beloved. Channing Tatum hasn't made a dud in a while.
No, he's
we'll see.
Hot commodity right now.
Yeah.
And of course we've got Oz the Great and Powerful, which I liked more than you did. Was it perfect? No. Was I engaged every step of the way? No. But I thought it was stunning visually. From a story standpoint, I still feel like it's a movie that was unnecessary. Why do that?
Right.
And some of it didn't connect right with
the sister's story was never developed, and it's got great people in it.
It takes more than green makeup to make Mila Kunis ugly.
The first 10 minutes was great. The last 10 minutes was great.
And the China doll stuff. There was some cool stuff.
Yeah, there was some cool stuff.
The reason we bring it up this September 20th, your favorite movie of all time.
Yes, Wizard of Oz.
The Wizard of Oz. IMAX 3D.
Wow.
1 week only.
Wow.
September 20th. Everyone go see it. I'm pumped for that.
I should probably watch it every day that week.
Yeah, can't wait. Sunset in the Square, Movies in the Park, June 28th, Night at the Museum 2, July 12th, we've got Ice Age Continental
Great idea.
Drift.
Go downtown St. George, free films
Start at dark
on the big
between
screen.
8:30 and 9 p.m. They're showing Hook, Princess Bride,
Bring your
Nightmare
chaise
Before
lounge,
Christmas. Lot
beach
of great
chair.
Stuff. They're showing Last
Water.
Exorcism 2 there. I can't wait.
Oh, wow. Great family film.
Let's end with our weekly power rank.
But they've edited it, so it's 4 minutes long.
Yeah, weekly power rank.
Yes. Okay, number 5, Epic, a fun little animated film. Kind of silly, but it's all right. Now You See Me, the magical heist film. It's all right. The Internship, a good little PG-13 comedy, except for one bad scene. Star Trek, I still think if you haven't seen Star Trek Into Darkness, a fun action film. And the number one, obviously, for me, that everybody's talking about is Man of Steel.
Number 5 for me is 42, the baseball movie, which is playing over at Main Street Cinema right now. Really good. Number 4 is Fast and Furious 6.
Sure.
It's ridiculous, but near perfect in its ridiculousness.
Love that.
Number 3, Star Trek.
That's what my
Into
wife
Darkness.
said about me.
Oh, there you go. She was wrong. Number 3 is just kidding. I love you, Bruce. Number 3 is Star Trek Into Darkness. Number 2, Man of Steel. While I was somewhat disappointed, there's still a lot of great stuff in there. It's worth seeing. You got to see it in the theater. Number 1 for me is This Is the End, which is a great, raunchy, crude, irreverent, R-rated comedy. Bruce, I want to wish you a very merry happy Father's Day.
You must be a good father because you have 3 kids.
I have 4.
4. Oh, sorry about that.
5 if you include me.
So you've outrun me.
Yeah, I don't
You
want
have more father. That makes you a better father. You got more kids than me.
Yes. Happy Father's Day, everyone, from the Film Fanatics. We love you all, and we'll see you at the movies.
95.3 KTIM, St. George. If it's local,